We are going into this interview with Donald Trump and Meet the Press. And there are a couple of topics here that I did want to focus on from the interview. And that is the economy, immigration, and what he said about, not pursuing Biden, which a lot of people were shocked by that one. Let's go ahead and get started with the part here about the economy. I think everybody's going to want to hear this. So, of course, they have Kristen Welker here interviewing him. This was a weird setup to me because when I saw this, I was like, are you guys in a lobby? Is this an office or like a hotel lobby? That's when I saw this. I was like, it doesn't look like a real private space. In fact, that door there looks like it's open, but let's get into it.
Signature promises on the campaign trail, which was to end inflation, to lower prices. You are now proposing tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners. Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
I don't believe it.
Can you guarantee American families won't pay more?
I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow. But I can say that if you look at just pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries, but in particular China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had no inflation. In fact, when I handed it over, they didn't have inflation for a year and a half. They wanted almost 2 years, just based on what I had created. And then they created inflation with energy and with spending too much. So I think I'm a big believer in tariffs. I think tariffs are the most beautiful word. I think they're beautiful. It's going to make us rich. We're subsidizing Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year. We're subsidizing Mexico for almost $300 billion. We shouldn't be subsidizing. Why are we subsidizing these countries? If we're going to subsidize them, let them become a state. We're subsidizing Mexico, and we're subsidizing Canada, and we're subsidizing many countries all over the world. And all I want to do is I want to have a level, fast, but fair playing field.
So let's pause here about the tariffs. There's something I do want to give everybody a heads up about because I do want to prepare you for this. Putting tariffs on those countries will increase cost here in the United States. And the reason for that is because we don't produce much here. So even if you're one of those people you like to shop local, and I try to shop local as much as I can, and you think, you're going to a mom and pop shop, you're like, this is local, I'm supporting local business. And you're going into a store and you're like, I'm going to buy this water bottle instead of, at Walmart, I'm going to get it from the mom and pop place down the street. What you may not know is that they have the water bottle at their store at the mom and pop shop, but you don't know where the materials came from to make it. So this is oftentimes where, and it's not everyone, but oftentimes even some of the mom and pop places, they'll get the materials from cheaper countries because the materials are cheaper to get them, like from Mexico or from China, than it is to buy those materials here in the United States. Also, again, like I said, we don't produce a lot. So the tariffs are going to increase costs on goods in the U.S. That's just an economic fact. I think Donald Trump should be honest about that to people. But I think the reason why he's kind of wavering on that a little bit is because I think he's trying to make it so it doesn't come to that, because he has said, like, well, China, if you guys don't stop doing this, then I'm going to do the tariffs. But you really can't tell them, what to do with their businesses. If you approve of free market, then that means you support competition. And if you support competition, then that means competition from other countries as well, not just people here in the United States. But tariffs are going to increase the cost.
Sir, your previous tariffs during your first administration cost Americans some $80 billion. And now you have major companies from Walmart, Black & Decker, AutoZone saying that any tariffs are going to force them to drive up prices for their consumers. How do you make sure that these CEOs, that these companies don't, in fact, pass on the cost of tariffs to their consumers?
They cost Americans nothing. They made a great economy for us. They also solve another problem. If we were going to have problems having to do with wars and having to do with other things, tariffs, I have stopped wars with tariffs by saying, you guys want to fight, it's great, but both of you are going to pay tariffs to the United States at 100%. And They have many purposes, tariffs, if properly used. I don't say you use them like a madman. I say properly used.
But telling BRICS that if they move away from the dollar, you're going to implement tariffs would be terrible for the United States, because we really can't continue as a country to sanction like countries like Russia and China, but then still tell them you have to continue to use our dollar. If you were putting sanctions on me all the damn time, I would move away from you too, you know? That's like an abusive relationship. I don't want to stay in this abuse. I'm going to move on, to something more free. So I don't think like that threat that Trump is making towards them, I don't think that's going to work out in our favor at all.
But it didn't cost this country anything. It made this country money. And we never really got the chance to go all out because we had to fight COVID in the last part. And we did it very successfully. And when I handed it over to Biden, the stock market was higher than what it was just previous to COVID coming in. It was actually higher. Tariffs properly used, are a very powerful tool, not only economically, but also for getting other things outside of economics.
Well, again, prices did go up on some goods in your first administration, washing machines, tires. Will you punish CEOs?
Let me just explain to you. No. You mentioned washing machines. So you look at Whirlpool in Ohio. I got a call from Jim Jordan, one of the greats, congressman from Ohio. And he said, they're going out of business because South Korea and China are dumping washing machines into our country. And I put a 50% tariff on the washing machines coming in from China and South Korea. And Whirlpool and the companies that made washing machines, which are based in Ohio, largely based in Ohio, went through the roof. We saved thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs. They were all going out of business because they were dumping washing machines. And when I put the tariffs on, they became successful businesses. No, it didn't. Not only didn't it cost people, it made our country stronger and more powerful, and it kept jobs.
But how do you make sure that consumers don't wind up paying more? Will you punish CEOs who try to pass the cost of tariffs on to their customers?
Well,
the way that Kristen Welker, like her interview style always cracks me up, because when she kind of goes in pretty strong and like her eyes like do this and she's like, will you punish? Like, it's just kind of funny, like her interview style. But it was interesting to me that she brought up washing machines, because she was like, those prices went up on washing machines, and I can understand tires. I just had to replace a tire a couple days ago, but I was like thinking to myself, like, do people really buy washing machine? Like, I'm trying to remember. Number one, I have washing machine. I don't plan to buy one ever, unless like this one just falls apart. So I was wondering myself, I'm like, do people just go and buy washing machines? Like, or do they only do that when their washer and dryer breaks down? Like, do people just go shopping and say, oh, I just want something new. I want a new washer and dryer. Do people do that? Because I don't do that. That was something I thought about.
The market's going to take care of it. I mean, actually, the market takes care of it. And if it doesn't, we adjust it somewhat. But in the case of Whirlpool, or let's say companies that made washing machines, they were all being put out of business by the dumping from, in particular, South Korea and China. And when I put the tariffs on, very substantial tariffs, although peanuts compared to what people do to us, what countries do to us, it became a very, very powerful, successful company. Now, let's say I didn't do the tariffs. It would have gone out of business. You would have lost tens of thousands of jobs, and you don't include that in your equation. No, they make a lot of money. I'll go a step further. Tariffs are going to make our country rich. Tariffs are going to help us pay off $35 trillion in debt. Tariffs are going to make our country safe, because China, as an example, doesn't want to play games with us if we're going to do tariffs on them. They don't want to play games. And we have a lot of games being played on us right now.
Well, I think, and that...
Guys, tariffs are not going to make I'm serious. I'm not kidding around. If he puts tariffs, especially on China, a lot of the products that we have in this country are made in China. So if he puts tariffs on China, those products, the prices are going to increase. Like, it's going to be more expensive for us to get those goods here because we don't produce. So the solution should be for us to produce more here in the United States. That should be the solution. And I know people continue to say, well, manufacturing has been coming back to the US. Yeah, but at one point we were making everything here. Way before my time, but at one point we're making everything here. And that's the sad part, is that we should be producing more here in the United States. That's the part there about the tariffs. And then you wouldn't have to worry about what China or these other countries are doing competitively, because we produce our own stuff. So that's the direction we should be moving into. Let's get back to the days of the 50s and the 40s and the 60s when it comes to production and producing our own goods right here in the United States. That also creates jobs, right? Now we're moving on to minimum wage, and this is a doozy. Hold on to this one, folks.
Of the economy, sir, the minimum wage. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 since 2009. There are 20 states that still have the federal minimum wage at $7.25. And I actually have a map. 19 of these states actually voted for you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pause this because I do want everyone to see this. All of these states that are marked red, they still have the $7.25 hour minimum wage. So when people ask me, they're like, well, yeah, that's the federal minimum wage, but that's not what the pay is in any of those states. No, it's true. See, you see this? And Pennsylvania being one of them, right? Some of these swing states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, we got Georgia, we had North Carolina. So this is why I was trying to tell you guys, like, that's quite a number of states in this country. And we need to do something, right?
And you can see it right here. I don't know if you remember this, but during the debate in 2020, I asked you if you would raise the minimum wage. You said you would consider it. And so my question for you is, now that you are going back to the White House, for these 19 states that voted for you, are you going to raise the federal minimum wage? It's a very
low number. I will agree. It's a very low number. Let me give you the downside, though. Yeah. In California, they raised it up to a very high number. And your restaurants are going out of business all over the place. The population is shrinking. It's had a very negative impact. But there is a level at which you could do it, absolutely. Yeah.
What is that level, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I can say this. You have a lot of businesses that are open and thriving because of the lower minimum wage. If you raise it too much, and you understand this, if California went crazy, they went crazy. And people, the restaurants are closing all over. Many more people are hurt.
So
But that wouldn't have happened. This is the part that we have to hit home. That would not have happened if our government would have continued to increase the minimum wage after Barack Obama's presidency. See, the problem is we got to $7.25 and it stayed there for years. If we would have incrementally increased the minimum wage since then, we would already be at that $15 minimum wage now, and those companies would have had time to adjust for that. But now, yeah, like California is hurting right now because they went up and said, boom, let's just go ahead and do 15. And then we're going to increase it to this and this. That was trying to make up for all the years that the federal government did not increase the minimum wage. But if they had been doing this incrementally, they wouldn't have had that panic mode. And I would argue that those restaurants would still be open. So that's another thing. Why did that stop? Why did we stop increasing the minimum wage once it got to $7.25 an hour? And then also, Kristen Welker, I would push her to ask a better question, because the minimum wage question is easy. We need to talk about a living wage. Because you can continue to increase the minimum wage, but people still can't live off of it because we're already so far behind. So what Americans actually need is a living wage. And I would like to see these commentators that are on corporate media, because we're not going to be on there. I would like to see them ask that question. How do you feel about a living wage? Not how do you feel about a minimum wage? Because minimum means the bare minimum that they have to pay your ass. Okay. Not what you need to make it in this country. We need to start talking about a living wage. So I want us to change the way that we talk about things when we're asking for something. Always ask for more than what you want.
I hear you saying, similarly to sort of what you said in 2020, will you consider? Is this something you're going to look at?
I'd want to speak to the governors. And the other thing that's very complicated about minimum wages is places are so different. Mississippi and Alabama and great places are very different than New York or California. I mean, in terms of the cost of living and other things. So it would be nice to have just a minimum wage for the whole country, but it wouldn't work because you have places where it's very inexpensive to live, where a minimum wage, which is $8 or $9, might be, might have very little effect because the cost of living in certain places is really low.
Pause. If you're a billionaire, does it matter where you live? If you're a billionaire and you decide to buy a home in North Carolina, or let's go to a state that's even lower cost of living. If you're a billionaire and you decide to buy a house in Arkansas, do you not get to still be a billionaire because you bought a house and you're living in Arkansas? No, you still get to be a billionaire. So you see the problem with the framing, ladies and gentlemen, right? It shouldn't matter if one of these states has a lower cost of living than others. They're not going to stay that way. I've seen some of those states down south that a lot of people from New York and Massachusetts have continued to move to become expensive. North Carolina is more expensive now. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area is more expensive. There are houses, $500,000 houses in Raleigh area that do not look brand new. I remember when you can get a 4-bedroom house in North Carolina for under $200,000. I remember when you can get a 4-bedroom house in South Carolina for under $95,000. That was not that long ago. So those places that he's saying are, inexpensive, those places will continue to increase over time too, because people are leaving the expensive states and they're moving there. He mentioned Alabama. People are like, who's going to move to Alabama? There's actually a place called Huntsville, Alabama, that is actually pretty popular. I know a number of former classmates from middle school and high school that have now relocated to Huntsville, Alabama, because it's relatively affordable for them. And their careers. So there's that. I believe they also have a NASA location down there in Huntsville, Alabama. So once upon a time, people said this about Tennessee. Look how expensive Nashville, Tennessee is now today because more people moved out that way. So that argument that Donald Trump presented there, I could throw that back too. I could say, well, if a billionaire buys a house in Arkansas and settles there, should he no longer be a billionaire? Should he no longer make those billions? I would argue we need to get rid of billionaires. But should he no longer have that salary because he moved to a cheaper state?
Before we move on to immigration, which I do want to talk about, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, said he will not leave his post even if you ask him to. Will you try to replace Jerome Powell?
No, I don't think so. I don't see it. But I think if I told him to, he would.
We can skip the Jerome Powell part. I don't want to get into that. I do want to go to the immigration part here. And this is the one I think a lot of people are nervous about. And that is the birthright citizenship. He does get into that here.
Items. You've talked about prioritizing people who have criminal histories.
Correct.
But is it your plan to deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years?
Well, I think you have to do it. And it's a very tough thing to do. But you have to have, you have rules, regulations, laws. They came in illegally. The people that have been treated very unfairly are the people that have been online for 10 years to come into the country. And we're going to make it very easy for people to come in terms of they have to pass the test. They have to be able to tell you what the Statue of Liberty is. They have to tell you a little bit about our country. They have to love our country. They can't come out of prisons. We don't want people that are in for murder. So we had 11,000 and 13,000 different estimates, 13,099 murderers released into our country over the last 3 years. They're walking down the streets. They're walking next to you and your family, and they're very dangerous.
The 13,000 figure, I think, goes back about 40 years.
No, it doesn't. No, it's within the 3-year period. It's during the Biden term. No, that was a fiction that they put that out. This was done by the Border Patrol. It's 13,099, and it's during the Biden period of time. And these are murderers, many of whom murdered more than one person. You don't want those people in this country.
But you're saying something, sir, that's significant. I just want to make sure I'm clear, which is that you're saying, yes, your criminal histories, but everyone who's here illegally has to go.
I'm saying this. We have to get the criminals out of our country. We have to get people that were taken out of mental institutions and put them back into their mental institution, no matter what country it is. Do you know that Venezuela, their prisons are at the lowest point in terms of emptiness that they've ever been? They're taking their people out of those prisons by the thousands, and they're And just to get back, because I know exactly what you're getting at. Number one, we're doing criminals, and we're going to do them really rapidly. We're getting the worst gang probably with MS-13, and the Venezuelan gangs are the worst in the world. They're vicious, violent people.
Pause. So this is the part where Eric Adams agreed with New York City Mayor Eric Adams agreed with Donald Trump on, was removing those that are criminals, those that are either were criminals before they came here or they've committed crime since they've been here. That's how this conversation starts. But watch where it leads. This part, I may need to have another immigration panel on this show. I did one right before the election. I may need to have another one to get people's perspectives about this, because there's a number of people I know that are living in New York City, and they have complained to me many times about the immigration process that's happening there, the migrant crisis. Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, has been complaining about it. And in particular, there tends to be, or there's this neighborhood in Queens. I saw it on local New York news on YouTube, where there's a neighborhood in Queens where apparently Roosevelt Avenue, I believe that's the name of it, where it was broad daylight, and they were basically setting up a brothel, just women lined up in broad daylight. And the news was saying kids have to walk past here on their way to school. And those were the people that, to them, this is what they did when they were in their country. And then they come here and they're like, well, we don't have work, so I'm just going to do what I know to do. And they're not being arrested. They're allowed to do, their business out there on Roosevelt Avenue. So a number of people have spoken to me about that, and I've seen videos about that as well. And yeah, those are cause for concerns. Why is there, first of all, that's illegal, but why is that happening in broad daylight? So there are some concerns that I think cannot be ignored. But watch where this goes.
And you see what they've done in Colorado and other places. They're literally taking over apartment complexes and doing it with impunity. They don't care. They just are, they're in the real estate business.
The local police say that is not the case in Colorado.
Oh, it's totally the case. I mean, I have it
you
on
don't
tape.
believe the local police.
I used to play it at my rallies every single night. No, they're breaking into doors. They're taking over the building.
But sir, you
and by the way,
raised the point.
the police are afraid to do anything.
You raised the point that the logistics are complicated. You said
Sure
it yourself.
they are, but everything's complicated.
Yeah, you need 24 times more ICE detention capacity just to deport 1 million people per year, not to mention more agents, more judges, more planes. Is it realistic to deport everyone who's here illegally?
You have no choice. First of all, they're costing us a fortune. But we're starting with the criminals, and we got to do it. And then we're starting with others, and we're going to see how it goes.
Who are the others?
Others are other people outside of criminals. We have convicted murders. We don't mean people that are even on trial. We have people that have murdered numerous people are on our streets and in our farms, and we have to get them out of our country.
What about dreamers, sir? Dreamers who were brought to this country illegally as children. You said once back in 2017, they, quote, shouldn't be very worried about being deported. Should they be worried now?
The dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about the dreamers, because these are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language of their country. And yes, we're going to do.
So this is the question I have to ask, and please let me know in the chat for if he's saying some of the people that are dreamers are middle-aged now, how are they? Is it that even though they were a dream, why don't they have citizenship? Why don't they have that? Is it because they are a dreamer, so they're not allowed to apply for the citizenship, or is it because they're choosing not to apply for it? I sincerely want to know. I'm asking, why is it that they don't have that? Because I've seen a couple of people on social media panic, and they said oh no, they're going to come and get me, and I've been in this country for 20, 30 years. And that is a question I do have. If you've been here for 20, 30 years, how is it that they don't have the citizenship? I have to ask that question. I'm not trying to be an ass. I seriously just don't know. How is it that they don't have it? Are they not applying for it, or is it that they can't apply for it because they were a dreamer? I don't know. But everybody heard what he said. He said, first, they're going to go for those that have criminal record, and then eventually the dreamers are going to come later. Now, who would be protected? And this is where I think some people are panicking unrealistically. Obviously, if you have permanent resident status, you would be protected. You have a green card, you would be protected, like that type of thing. And some people have been saying, oh God, they're going to get rid of me and I have a green card, or they're going to get rid of me and I have this. And that's not the way. Okay, Eric just told me the dreamers got deferred deportation, not access to citizenship. Well, what the fuck? So they gave them deferred deportation, but they didn't give them access to citizenship? I mean, what? We'll talk about it. We can talk about it on call-in. This is a doozy.
Something about the
What does that
dreamers.
mean?
And
What are you going to do?
I will work with the Democrats on a plan, and if we can come up with a plan, but the Democrats have made it very, very difficult to do anything. Republicans are very open to the dreamers. The dreamers, we're talking many years ago, they were brought into this country, many years ago. Some of them are no longer young people, and in many cases, they become successful. They have great jobs. In some cases, they have small businesses. Some cases, they might have large businesses. And we're going to have to do something with them. And
You want them to be able to stay. That's what you're saying?
I do.
Okay.
I want to be able to work something out. And it should have been able to be worked out over the last 3 or 4 years. And it never got worked out. You know, Biden could have done it because he controlled, Congress to a certain extent, right? He could have done something, but they didn't do it. I never understood why, because they always seem to want to do it, but then when it comes down to it, they don't. I think we can work with the Democrats and work something out.
Let me ask you about another group of people.
This is a good point. Samantha says SMH, another half-ass policy. Right. Like, that's my question. Like, what was the point? Like, you deferred deportation, but you never gave these people a pathway to citizenship. Like, why would you do that? It's just weird to me.
The estimated 4 million families in America who have mixed immigration status. So I'm talking about parents who might be here illegally, but the kids are here legally. Your borders are.
You're talking about separation.
Yeah, well, there are two aspects to this. Your border czar, Tom Homan, said they can be deported together. Correct. Is that the plan?
Well, that way you keep well, I don't want to be breaking up families. So the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together, and you have to send them all back. Even
kids who are here legally?
Well, what you're going to do if they want to stay with the father? Look, we have to have rules and regulations. You can always find something out like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. I'll tell you what's going to be horrible. When we take a wonderful young woman who's with a criminal, and they show the woman, and she could stay by the law, but they show the woman being taken out, or they want her out, and your cameras are focused on her as she's crying, as she's being taken out of our country, and then the public turns against us. But we have to do our job, and you have to have a series of standards and a series of laws. And in the end, look, our country is a mess. We have the highest crime rate, and during the debate, a man whose ratings have gone way down, David Muir, said to me, no, crime is, because I had to debate 3 people, not one. Debating 1 was easy. Debating 3 was actually pretty easy, too, if you want to know the truth. But David Muir said, the crime rates have gone down. I said, no, they've gone up. And then the following day, they released the crime rates, and they were way up.
Yeah, the FBI statistics, you're talking about those FBI statistics.
Well, no, but he gave the wrong answer.
Confusing based on what you're looking at.
But a lot of that is migrant crime.
Let me ask you about another aspect of this.
Kristen, a lot of it's migrant crime.
Well,
Kristen says she don't really want to talk about it, so she moving on to another question. He came back and said, but Kristen, it's migrant crime. Kristen's like, yeah, we're going to move on to another question.
Let me ask you about another aspect of this that I think a lot of people are really curious about. 3% of the people who are here illegally have criminal histories. But in your first administration, you had the zero tolerance policy, where we did see family separations. Yeah. You ended it. The purpose of that, though, to some extent, you talked about this at the time, was deterrent.
You also had it with Obama. You do know that.
He didn't have a zero tolerance policy.
And you also know he built the jails for children.
He didn't have a zero tolerance policy.
Well, we can't talk about that. We can't talk about Obama building those building the cages for the kids. Kristen, we got to move on. It's true. But Kristen's like, we got to move on. No, no, no. Let's not talk about that. I'm supposed to be on the Democrat side, so we can't bring up what Obama did.
2014, he built the jails. You know that.
I want to ask you about the zero tolerance policy. I mean, he didn't have a systemic, we're going to separate families. Families were separated when parents were a threat to the kids.
We don't have to separate a family.
This.
Excuse me, Kristen.
Yeah.
We don't have to separate families.
Yeah.
We'll send the whole family very humanely back to the country where they came. That way the family's not separated.
So no more family separations. You're not reviving the zero tolerance
Well, it depends on the family. The family may decide to say, I'd rather have dad go, and we'll stay here. And in which case they have that option.
But you're not going to revive your zero tolerance policy, which was put in place as a deterrent. Is there any universe where you would bring that back, sir?
We need deterrence. Look, ready? When somebody comes here illegally, they're going out. It's very simple. When they come here illegally, they're going out. Now, if they come here illegally, but their family is here legally, then the family has a choice. The person that came in illegally can go out, or they can all go out together.
So did everybody hear what he was saying there? And again, you know, we can't take everybody at their word, especially before they're in office, because people say things and then things change. What he's basically saying is, if you have family that's here legally and you come here illegally, you have a choice. Either the family members that are here legally can leave with you, but either way, you will be leaving. Now, I question how he's going to be able to do this, to be honest with you. Like, I know he said he's going to utilize the military, et cetera. I don't foresee how he would be able to do that. And there's another thing that I think people aren't bringing up, and that is the economy. What happens to a lot of those jobs that they're doing? And I'm not talking about the jobs that Americans want, but I'm wondering about what happens to like those jobs. Like when I worked in restaurants, a lot of times the dishwashers were immigrants, undocumented. I can say it here. Hell, I didn't hire, I wasn't the boss, but what's going to happen there? And then what's going to be funny to me is some of the rich people who have like the housekeepers and the nannies and the landscapers that they know are undocumented, but they just keep that hush between themselves. I think you might see some rich people starting to shit the fan, like if this goes through. They're not going to say that now because they don't want you to know that they're doing that, right? But this will be interesting. Listen to this part.
And that was made very clear by Tom Homan.
So you're not, at this point in time, planning to revive that zero tolerance policy where kids are
Well, if you call
separated.
that, yeah, I'm doing what I just told you I'm going to do. I don't want to send the family out. I don't want to send anybody out. But I'll tell you, we have to, because otherwise we have no country. If we don't have borders, and if we don't have voting, good voting, fair voting, do you know they're still counting votes in San Diego, California? Listen, they're still counting the votes.
That's insane. They're still counting, but SP said, can he change birthright citizenship? They get to that. And that's the part I think a lot of you are really going to want to hear.
This is almost 4 weeks. They're still counting the votes. If we don't have fair elections and honest voting and machines that work quickly, if you had paper ballots, every election will be over by 10 o'clock in the evening.
So let me ask you.
You understand what I'm saying?
Let me, before we get
and you get a much more accurate count.
Before we get to all of that, let me ask you about some of your other promises on this topic. You promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people. But we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
We're the only country that has it.
I don't see how, and this is the part I really wanted everybody to hear. I don't see how he's going to go around the 14th Amendment. And I'm wondering if he'll get pushback, whether it's from Congress, whether it's from, the Supreme Court. I don't know. But I don't see how he's going to be able to go around the 14th Amendment. Now, that being said, the 14th Amendment originally, when it comes to race, it was supposed to apply towards those of us that are American descendants of slavery. That's one of those things that where other people were added to it. So for people asking, how did we get here? That's how we got here.
If somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it. It's ridiculous. Do you know we're the only country in the world that has it? Do you know that? There's not one other country.
What about the legal challenge, inevitable legal challenges that'll come?
Do you know we have thousands of judges? Somebody walks onto our land, and we have to now say, welcome to the United States. They could be a criminal or not a criminal. We release them into our country. It's called catch and release. We release them into our country. Wait, just 1 second. And now they get them lawyers. And the lawyers are good lawyers. And everybody has a lawyer. And do you know how many judges we have? Thousands. Thousands. Now, here's what other countries do. They come into the land and they say, I'm sorry, you have to go. And they take them out. Okay? With us, once they touch our land, we're into litigation that lasts for years, costs us hundreds of billions of dollars. We have judges, and I'm sure they're all.
I will pause here and I will say this. I do want to answer Sharon's question because I knew this one was going to come up. For one, Donald Trump, when he says the other countries don't let this happen, that's actually not true. Even when I lived in Germany, that happened. Germany wasn't like, oh, you can't stay here. You got to get out of here. I don't know if they're still doing that now, but when I lived there, Germany allowed that to happen too. So I don't know what other countries he's talking about, but other countries have that happen too. When people say, why are all the immigrants, why is everyone coming here? This is supposed to be the American dream, supposed to be. But I would also tell people they're not just coming here. There are people that are also going to the UK, that are going to Germany, that are going to other countries in Europe, other countries in South America. A lot of times, and this is something Anya Parampil talked about when she was in Venezuela, is that a lot of the people that are coming from Venezuela, Anya was saying some of them are not Venezuelan. They're actually from other countries in South America, and they've been migrating around in South America and have made their way to Venezuela. So just keep that in mind. The question about his children, here's something that I do want to debunk. There's this story going around that the birtherism, would apply to his kids as well if he were to end birthright citizenship, because technically 3 of his children, this excludes Tiffany. But the other 3 of his kids, because Ivanka, is that Ivana or Ivanka? I get their names mixed up, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Apparently was not a citizen when she had them, but it doesn't matter because he was. So that's the thing, because he's the father, the birth father, and he is an American citizen, that birthright citizenship rule would not apply to his 3 children. And Tiffany would be excluded anyway because Tiffany, her mother, that's I think her name is Marla. Yeah, she's American. She was born in America. Ivanka, right? Ivanka. So I see people saying that on social media. That's not how that works. Like if one of the birth parents is, an American citizen, then that means the kids will be fine. So his 3 children that he had with Ivanka will be fine because he is an American citizen and he was at that time. We'll go on a little bit more here.
Well, honest, but I don't know that for a fact. You can imagine what's going on with the judges. But just so because I have a lot of judges. I tell you what, I know more about judges than any human being in history. Look, we have judges. Every time somebody puts 2 feet or even 1 foot on a piece of our land, it's welcome to long-term litigation. Other countries, every other country, when somebody walks on and they see that they're here illegally, they walk them off, they take them back to where they came from. We have to get rid of this system. It's killing our country.
So again, like I said, other countries are allowing that to happen too. So just FYI. Now, that being said, the last thing that I do want to show you from this interview, which I think gave a lot of people pause, was this part about Joe Biden. So he was questioned whether or not he would investigate President Joe Biden. And I think you might be surprised with the comment that he made here. I think a lot of people were like, what the hell?
I'm really looking to make our country successful. I'm not looking to go back into the past. I'm looking to make our country successful. Retribution will be through success. If we can make this country successful, that would be that would be such a great achievement. Bring it back. We have a country now that's overridden with crime, that has millions of people that shouldn't be here, that should be in prisons in other countries, that should be in mental institutions. We have drug lords being dropped into our country and told never go back to their country. I'm looking to make our country great. I'm looking to bring prices down because, I won on two things, the border and more than immigration. They like to say immigration. I break it down more to the border, but I won on the border and I won on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. I'm really looking to make our country successful. I'm not looking to go back into the past. I'm looking to make our country successful.
So to answer that question, this is what a lot of people were surprised by, that Donald Trump said that, no, he's not going to investigate Joe Biden. So remember what I told you, how people that are part of the same club look out for each other, regardless of political party. When I tell you, regardless if they're Republican or Democrat, they can go to the same country club. This is a perfect example of that. So that interview is interesting. It is a longer interview. So if you have time, check that out. I don't know what to tell you guys. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I am going to say that, again, when it comes to the economy, tariffs will increase the price of goods. There is no economist, I think, in the United States that would tell you differently. So just keep that in mind and prepare yourself for that. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.